show him why we call it Splatterhouse.
When a company has lasted a long time, they have a huge array of characters and series to rely on. That's both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it shows that a company has a diverse cast of characters and series to draw from, and that the studio is not afraid to try new things. On the other hand, the studio may only draw on 4 or 5 of these series, and only bring out their more obscure titles for cameos. I'm sure many studios wish they had the same strength of series as Sega, Nintendo or Capcom. But once every blue moon, something magical happens, and a once long-lost franchise is revived, and so in 2010, Bandai Namco released a new entry in the Splatterhouse series, Splatterhouse 2010. It seems the natural progression in video games is that when a 2D beat-em-up needs to make the jump to the next generation, they all end up the same, so we go from Final Fight to Final Fight Streetwise. Streets of Rage to a cancelled 3D Streets of Rage that was later converted into Fighting Force, and Golden Axe.
By my balls, girl! I thought you were dead!
Anyway, my point is that transition is not really that seamless. But hey, we're on 360 and PlayStation 3. Developers have figured this out now. No more clunky controls or boring combat, as we have examples like DMC and God Hand to show how this formula can be done right. Right? Now, Splatterhouse is a series, in my opinion, that has a focus on story. At least compared to other games at the time. If you plugged in Sonic the Hedgehog and hit start, boom, there you go, you're playing right away. But Splatterhouse took the time to have an intro sequence and text which let you know what was going on, and by the third game, multiple cutscenes with different outcomes depending on how you played. The game's story is a retelling of the first game, but with a bit more of an explanation. In the first game, you just hear Jennifer scream and you end up in the basement with a terror mask. Here it is much more fleshed out, with Dr. West taking Jennifer to summon an Eldritch God, and Rick and the Mask team up to stop him, and the two visit different locations to save Jennifer. Okay, it's not a masterful story like how I built it up earlier, but there are little touches here and there if you are paying attention, mostly via phonograms that you can listen to throughout the levels that explains things like the monsters you are fighting were originally people that Dr. West experimented on. Speaking of, after 3 games and 1 spin-off, we finally get to see Dr. West. Yes, the guy that caused all this, we never really see. I mean, you could make assumptions like the last boss is Dr. West as a monster, or this scientist boss was Dr. West, but now we can confirm that this is Dr. West. The Mask is a lot more vocal in this game, and it and Rick have banter between one another. Now, this could get really annoying very quickly. If there's one trope in video games I hate, it's when 2 characters are constantly talking and stating the obvious. This is alleviated by the Mask being voiced by Jim Cummings, and if you have watched anything with voiceover in the past 20 years, you've heard his voice. Some of his lines are hit and miss, but some did make me chuckle to myself. And if you're not a fan of how much of a whiny bitch Rick is, you'd be happy to know the Mask is constantly making fun of him. However, there are some times where the game will trigger the same audio cue over and over, meaning the Mask will repeat its lines.
Going up? Going up? Going up?
It's probably when you're in range of the object.
Going up? Going up?
Oh no, it breaks. Okay. Going up, going up, going up.
Now, Rick's new design is passable at first. When redesigning a character from so long ago with a new perspective, you can lose the feel of the character and some liberties have to be taken. For instance, the mask is much less like a hockey mask than it has ever been, looking very similar to the cutscenes in Splatterhouse 3. Rick just wears trousers now so you can see the battle damage that occurs when he gets hit, but if you are a die-hard fan of Splatterhouse, you may have noticed an inconsistency with Rick's design, in that now he was wearing shoes for the first time in the series. The reason for this is because Bandai had a promotion going on with a brand of shoe. Yes, at the time you could buy Splatterhouse branded shoes, similar to how soap shoes were promoted in Sonic Adventure 2. But there it made sense to promote Sonic with shoes because he runs. but I guess promoting baseball bats with nails in them is not good for business. Combat is simple in that you have a light and a heavy attack, and you can alternate between the two in order to get different combos. There really isn't much use to different combos though, as there is nothing as useful as say a launcher or something for crowd control. You are able to use up a segment of your blood meter in order to use a more powered up version of a move, but you could put your blood meter to better use. For instance, if your blood meter is full, you're able to transform into Super Rick a la Splatterhouse 3. In this Berserker mode, you are impervious to damage and deal more damage. But by far the biggest use of the blood meter is a move that allows you to heal, an incredibly invaluable move, especially later on, which begs the question why they never teach you the move in the first place. Seriously, there are no in-game tutorials that explain how to do this move, and the only reference to it that I saw was during a loading screen, and I think I only saw it once. As you kill enemies, you will get upgrade points that you can use to buy new abilities. These can be to increase your move list, or your health and blood meter, or to give weapons you pick up different properties. One of the bigger touted features is the thrill kills. When an enemy is on low health, you're able to activate a contextual gruesome kill. The issue is that they happen way too often and get boring after the first few times. In other games like Bayonetta or Yakuza, which implement this sort of system, they do a few tricks in order to make sure they don't get old. When you do manage to pull off the visceral attack, the game rewards you with a portion of your blood bar, which can be useful when you're dealing with a boss or a group of enemies, as you're then able to heal. Another, in at least those games, is there are so many different animations and instances that determine different attacks. In Splatterhouse there are only around 7 or 8 different kills. Some have a little bit of shock factor, but it gets old fast. And some don't go far enough. You mean to tell me you're going to rip a dude's arms off and not beat him to death with them? A lot of times when I reach a new area and encounter new enemies, I would be excited to see the new kills, but then get disappointed that they were the same ones from the first level. Another solution is to have environmental kills. They do attempt to do this as puzzle solutions, but they should have been more creative with it. But the load times are your biggest enemy by far. The game loads for a considerable amount of time whenever you start a game, whenever you change level, or whenever you die. In fact, when you do die, you're waiting there for about 2 to 3 minutes. I feel like the game is loading the entire level over again. Because credit to the game, there are no load times in the levels themselves. It's like the whole level is loaded in one go. So whenever you die, it has to load the entirety of the level again. And this can get tedious really fast and kill all momentum, especially if you die in a boss fight. And every time it does load, you watch a repeated animation of some enemies yucking it up, and these get old really fast because they last so long.
Rawr XD.
Splatterhouse as a series has great locations, but there are so many times you can go through a house over and over. And with a 3D game being much more difficult to make unique locales as cheap and easy as a sprite background, it makes sense to make the different areas you visit more varied than a standard haunted house. So Splatterhouse moves away from the house setting and gets a bit more weird with the locales, such as going to an amusement park, junkyards, and industrial settings. Sure, the function of the room isn't all that different, you still are constrained to a small arena to bosh enemies until they explode into puddles. A new lick of paint onto your old banger can help distract from the smell after all. In case you missed my other videos on Splatterhouse, this game was originally a 2D side-scroller. Now occasionally in 3D platformers that have a 2D heritage, they will have a little gameplay section which is a throwback to earlier in the franchise. Splatterhouse tries that but fails spectacularly. Instead of making the game have different physics, or controlled differently to the 3D sections, instead the game just locks you to a 2D plane. Other than that, there is no difference, your momentum and moveset are the same, and this can make the platforming unresponsive and frustrating. And because the enemy AI does not act any differently, or are locked to a 2D plane themselves, they will mob and swarm you like it's a Black Friday sale. And while the ragdoll physics are fine in the rest of the game, here they feel super limp as enemies just flop over when you kill them. None of the flying enemies into the background and watching them splat onto the wall behind you, just flopping around. There is an elevator segment which may be a callback to the lift fight in the last games, or it just could be a coincidence, and tedious lift levels are just something devs think they need to do in games these days. Now, shall I address the elephant in the room? Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this game, which quite frankly is most of you, I mean, come on, I'm talking about Splatterhouse 2010, let me tell you about the collectibles. In games which feature some kind of collectible, they are usually some boring bullshit that you may attempt to collect at the start, but then you end up missing one and can't bother to go back, so you abandon trying to find the rest. And usually they are something uninteresting like a gramophone. Well, Splatterhouse has these too. Seriously though, why are there so many gramophones as collectibles in games? But the real collectible, the one you want, is the Jennifer pictures. Yeah boy, scour a level for some softcore pornography. It's quite surprising how effective this was for me to go look for these collectibles, and I'm not ashamed to admit I got really disappointed if I missed a piece of the picture. The devs were really smart at only giving you the goodies in the last 1 or 2 parts. Fantastic variety in the snaps as well, with a lot of really good kinks. Hell, Jennifer has more variety in her outfits than the rest of the game does in terms of gameplay. I'm surprised this is not advertised on the box. I think the game would have sold a lot better if people knew they could see some titties. They're really nice titties too. Jennifer is a very attractive character with a charming personality which is hard to come by in Western games these days. The bosses in this game are not too memorable at all. I can only remember a few off the top of my head and I had to look up the rest. It's a real shame because Splatterhouse is known for its great boss fights, maybe not great in execution, but the design and context of the bosses at least. Like in Splatterhouse, remember when you had to kill your wife who had turned into a horrific monster? Now do you remember Splatterhouse 2010, where you fight a clock tower transformer? We have a few return guests though. For instance, we have what some people think to be the best boss in the series to return. Not me though, I prefer the Pumpkin King, as you know. Yes, it's Biggie Smalls, or Biggie Man as he is more commonly known. Get it? Biggie Man? Buggy Man? Christ. The boss is really cool though, and I think out of all the bosses he got the most love, which makes me wonder why he is placed in the middle of the game and not at the end. And lastly we have a Shadow Rick encounter, and hey, he bursts out of a mirror again just like old times. Shadow Rick is wearing a red variant of our mask, because in the American port of the game, Rick's mask was originally red, so it's a callback to that. For more gaming trivia, be sure to subscribe to Did You Know Gaming. And I don't know if I just have bad luck or not, but the game is fairly buggy. What? I don't mean buggy in that there are flies everywhere, because, hey, there are flies everywhere. If you pause the game and you leave it for too long, then little flies will start to appear on your screen, which, you know, that's a nice touch, I guess. But there are a few bugs or weird gameplay niggles, such as platforms not working and you just fall to your death. Or the game soft-locked at one point, whereby a portal is meant to spawn, you beat all the enemies, and then you progress, and you go through the portal to the next area. That didn't happen. Instead, it flung our character out of bounds, and we were just falling forever continuously in limbo. And if we died, it would still happen. If we restarted the level, it still happened. If we quit and went back to the main menu, it still happened. We had to completely shut the game off, restart it, and then we were able to progress. Really odd. The game was originally developed by American game studio Bottle Rocket, but for whatever reason Bandai Namco decided to cut that deal and decided to make the game in-house. And with Bottle Rocket not having anything else on the table, they unfortunately went bankrupt. So it's really unclear who the blame should fall on for any problems the game has. Should it go for the original developers or Bandai Namco who picked it up and got it finished? And so ends the tale of Splatterhouse, a franchise decades old that ends as messily as it started. Even though Splatterhouse 2010 is no masterpiece, the games never were. They were always meant to be fun, bloody games that paid patronage to the movies that inspired it. And the 2010 version is a love letter to the series, with references to prior games and even having the originals playable. Does Splatterhouse deserve a second chance? I think if given to the right team, a really fun and gory action game can be made. And with God of War stepping down from that spot to be a pseudo-arty walkie-talkie game, there is definitely room for a game like Splatterhouse. So who knows, maybe we will get a chance to put that Terra mask on one more time. Actually, no, I'm wrong. Splatterhouse is trash. This series is never coming back, and I'm glad it's dead.